All right, good evening. Welcome to tonight's City Council workshop. We're going to start with an update and report from the Community Planning Association of Idaho, also known as COMPAS. We will hear from Executive Director Rayborn. And thank you for joining us, Greg. We look forward to your update.
Council. I'm Craig Rayborn. I think I still get to say I'm the relatively new Executive Director at COMPAS. I've been in the role now for just over a year. I used to have a slide up here kind of giving like all the places I've been, but I've primarily worked in the South and in the West and primarily in rapidly growing urban areas. So I came here with about 20 years of experience, very familiar with a lot of the types of issues and challenges that regions like ours are encountering. So today's presentation, this is really just what I've been calling a road show, is I've been trying to meet with all of the local governments, all of our member agencies, so that you guys all know what it is COMPAS does and the services that we provide and kind of what our role is in the region. And so I'll just kind of go through some of that right now. So COMPAS is an association of cities, counties, highway districts, and other agencies like school boards and some community redevelopment agencies like that who plan for the future of the region as a whole. We consist of all of the incorporated cities in Ada and Canyon counties. Boise County is also a member, and actually just this morning I got the official request from Elmore County to join COMPAS as well, and so we're really happy to be able to support all of these local governments and your activities around the region. We primarily focus on transportation, but our mission as a whole is to conduct regional planning, facilitate coordination and cooperation between our agencies. We serve as a source of information and expertise on all kinds of issues affecting Southwest Idaho. And then we assist all of our member agencies in accessing funding so that you can accomplish all of your local as well as support the regional goals. So to do that, we really have four primary types of activities that we undertake. We conduct transportation planning, and I'll talk about each of these in a little bit greater detail. We distribute federal transportation dollars. We provide technical expertise, and then we facilitate this cooperative, collaborative planning process. So I'm going to talk briefly about the region and some of the pressures that we're facing. So we are in a very dynamic region. So what this map here is showing, and I just do you all have the presentation up on your screens? I just want to make sure you're seeing the same thing. Okay, good, thank you. So the map that you're looking at right now is showing development permits over the past 5 years. And so you can kind of see there's a lot happening, and you can see quite a bit of it is happening in your neck of the woods here. As a region, our population right now is around 850,000, and we have about 340-ish thousand jobs. We will grow, we will add roughly 500,000 new people to Ada and Canyon counties over the next 25 or so years. That's averaging about 15 new households a day and about 16 new jobs every day. What this map is showing are the residential and job densities for the region. And so this is the current situation, 2025 data. The brown is residential, and the blue is higher density retail jobs. So we're not showing like the strip mall type jobs, the neighborhood residential type jobs, but this is really the institutional types of office space and other types of concentrations of industrial jobs and things like that. So this is 2025, and over the next 25, 30 years, this is what happens to the region. And if I can, I'll go back and forth so you can kind of get a sense of what fills in and where that's happening. And I will just note, I was shocked when I got here and I saw this, this information. But then we went back and looked, and historically, our projections have been within 1% or 2% of what the region actually sees about 20 years out. So we have a lot of confidence in this, and this reflects some of the new roads that are planned in the region as well, that will support the residential development as all of that starts to fill in. One of the interesting things about Caldwell is you basically form the western boundary of the urban core of the region. There'll be some changes probably in the next, after the next census. The Caldwell, Nampa urbanized area, you guys are close enough that you probably will will still be considered one urbanized area. And you'll hit a new threshold of population that will trigger some different federal requirements and standards. We'll start getting access to a more stable, we will probably, assuming that that happens, we will probably start getting access to a more stable funding source for transportation projects in the region as well. Another one of the interesting elements of our region is the centers of both jobs and housing are gradually shifting to the west. And so they're moving your way. But you know, what this map is showing, the red is showing the jobs, the employment centroids, and then the purple and green are showing households and population. And so you can kind of see how over time they have been shifting, and they're projected to continue shifting to the west. It kind of slows down a little bit as we start seeing more infill between, you know, the current kind of more rural area between, well, where Highway 16 is going in, but between, you know, Caldwell, Nampa, and then Meridian and Star area. But as that starts to fill in, it kind of slows down a little bit. But that trend is happening, and you can see how those gaps, the gap between the centers of jobs and housing, you know, it may just be a few miles, but when you add that up across 850,000 people, that's a whole lot of traffic that's happening. And that's why, you know, we get the traffic levels that we do and the congestion that we do. The growth, the future version of this map was going to show the size of those dots as well. Right now, they're just the center dots. But that growth is also explaining why the patterns of traffic are changing. And then that, like I said, that movement is also explaining why those volumes are sort of shifting around and so on. So what Compass does as what's called a metropolitan planning organization is we provide a seat at the table where the region's transportation decisions are made. So we have a board of directors made up entirely of elected officials, or sometimes appointed officials representing elected officials, as well as the heads of a lot of the agencies that are member agencies for us. And we put together the long-range transportation plans. I'll talk about those a little bit more as I get through the presentation a bit more. We're a voice for the region, beyond the region. So we are very active in national organizations that relate to transportation and regional issues. And so I'm active with what's called the National Association of Regional Councils. I'm on their Executive Directors Council. We're also participants with the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, which is a national group of about 350 or so of these MPOs. In fact, they're engaging right now. They're having a fly-in in DC right now, and we have one of our team members is at this fly-in talking about policy issues relating to overall federal transportation funding levels and how, you know, sort of what the programs and policies for those are going to be, working on a process that's called reauthorization. We also provide financial assistance, as I noted, for our member agencies and for the transportation projects around the region. We do technical assistance as well, and so we can help answer a lot of questions. We do a lot of, in addition to technical assistance, we do a lot of demographic analysis as well. This is an older chart. That growth rate is actually faster than that now. It's like 39% now. as we updated, this is a map from our last iteration of our regional plan. And all of those kind of roll up into long-range planning and hopefully problem-solving, finding those solutions for the region's mobility needs. So we conduct and develop a number of regional plans. Just last year, we adopted the Regional Safety Action Plan. It was the first one of these that we'd put together here in the Treasure Valley area. Our board just approved last month the high-capacity transit. It's called a Planning and Environmental Linkages Study, and it's not a commitment to fund a high-capacity transit system or anything like that, but it does set us up so that when the feds, as they tend to do, operate in cycles, when they come around in another few years and start putting more funds toward transit, which is sort of the pattern that they tend to follow, we'll be positioned at least to be able to step in and try to compete for some of those funds, and we think we have a pretty effective approach. And just to note, that does the line for that our board approved after a tremendous amount, a year and a half of public engagement and involvement and data analysis and all kinds of other stuff, and complying with a bunch of rules and requirements around this first sort of environmental study piece of the process. That line starts here in Caldwell and then would extend along the existing railroad track through, into Nampa, into Meridian, and then into Boise as well. We also undertake a bunch of connectivity studies. Two bigger ones that we're working on right now. There's a Northwest Canyon County study that's underway that may, if some of the projects that we're starting to look at in there were to pan out, might help relieve some of the traffic issues that Caldwell has. Provide a little bit more mobility on that sort of more northern corridor to the east. And then the State Highway 69 extension more to the south is another one that we're looking at right now as well. We're in the middle, it's getting close to being done, of what's called a resilience plan. So what we're looking at there are the study or the impacts of extreme weather events or other types of disruptions on the transportation system, so both on operations and the actual pieces of infrastructure as well, and coming up with, identifying the highest risk areas that are part of the transportation system, and then the most vulnerable areas, the ones that where a disruption would have the most impact, so that we'll be able to identify the best potential solutions for that. And all of those kind of roll up, along with a bunch of other types of planning activities that we do, roll up into our regional long-range plan. It's called Communities in Motion. The current iteration of that is Communities in Motion 2050. That was adopted about 3 or 4 years ago, and we're already in the process of updating that to Communities in Motion 2055. And before we're even done adopting Communities in Motion 2055 next year, we'll already be thinking about the next version of that as well. We have to update that on a 4-year cycle. But Communities in Motion plan identifies 4 primary regional goals. So improving safety, enhancing economic vitality, maintaining and hopefully enhancing the region's quality of life, and then continuing to make sure that we're providing a convenient to use set of roads and other pieces of transportation infrastructure. And these goals then, we use those in a number of different ways. So one of the ways we use these is through what we call the development review checklist, and we do this for all of our member agencies for development projects that are above a certain threshold. We're looking at a way to move that down, but this basically just takes the proposed development and we look at it and compare what it, or assess what it would do to the goals of the regional transportation plan. And so we've actually done about 70 of these for Caldwell since 2019, I think. And so we do quite a bit. Like I said, we've got a threshold for that right now, but you've been having a bunch of larger developments And so you're one of our more frequent customers for these. And you can use them how you want. We have no regulatory authority or anything like that. We're not like, there's no ordinance that people are having to comply with. This is essentially just a scorecard. But we do provide it to you prior to your decision or your decisions or actions around these projects. The Communities in Motion plan also includes, the current version has about $11 billion of funded improvements. Those are the ones for which we can identify a funding path for those. And it's really important to note, that's not all federal money. If they're regionally significant projects, meaning that they're on a big enough road or they're serving a large enough number of people or something like that, those projects have to go into the plan as well. And so it's some of the projects are your money, a lot of them are state dollars, a lot of them are federal dollars as well. But you can see the types of projects that are included in this: maintenance, safety, bridge rehab, intelligent transportation systems, trying to find ways to make the roads work better without having to expand them again and keep taking up more land and money on that. Public transportation, ped bike projects, travel demand management, similar to the intelligent transportation systems. The regional plan, long-range plan, also has identified a number of studies that we want to be able to undertake. And then, of course, all the roadway expansion projects on arterials or higher level roads are included in the plan too. So with that $11 billion, what this one's showing is what the current conditions are right now, or in 2025. So basically, the heavier or darker the line, that tells you the sort of the condition or the level of congestion that occurs on that road during peak hour travel, during the worst travel for that segment of road. So this is current, 2025. This is without any of that 11 billion, well actually it's not all the 11 billion, it's with about 5 billion of that 11 billion worth of projects, because they were already funded and they just, projects take time to move to fruition. But even with the full set of investments, can you really even see much of a difference there, right? This is without the investments, and this one is showing with the investments. That's why we've gone through, and there's one more slide in this sequence that I'll note, but that's why we focus quite a bit on the unfunded needs as well, so that we can talk about the region's revenue needs for the future. So one of the things that we also look at is, and in fact this has long been one of the measures, is the time it takes to go from Caldwell to downtown Boise. Along the I-84 corridor. We also do the northern corridors as well. You can kind of see back in 2006, and I'll talk about that number here in a second, but back in 2006, the travel time was 50 minutes. Our 20-year forecast had that at 2 hours. None of the improvements that we're seeing on 84 right now were in place or programmed or happening yet. But they have been undertaken, and there are a lot of improvements happening there. And that was reflected after that 2006 plan. I wasn't here, obviously, but that's kind of plan that generates a wake-up call, and a lot of effort then goes into identifying new projects and ways to pay for them. And so Compass worked with the legislature and state DOT to come up with funding mechanisms that would be able to get projects that would improve mobility along the I-84 corridor. So you can see how the travel time started to go down, as well as a projected travel time going down, and that trend has basically continued. Although we'll still note that for 2023, which was the year that last plan, our current plan, was adopted, the travel time and the way we did these calculations changed, so it becomes an approximation instead of an exact estimate. But we went from, we're now saying that travel time is about 30 minutes, which I think most of us who have done that would say seems about right. In 20 years, that would go up, even with the $11 billion of new projects that we have planned all over the region, including along 84. That number would still go up about 50%. with those improvements. Another one of the trends that we're seeing that's kind of disturbing that we need to find a way to address is what we call event days. And so those are the days when the travel time on any road is more than 30% of what it should be. And so in 2023, we had 32 of those days on I-84. In 2024, we had 37 of those days. We'll have the 2025 number soon, but it's more. No one's going to be surprised by that. And we're trying to control out for construction-related delays because those are sort of a benefit in the long run. So these tend to be what we call the non-recurring congestion, which is code for crashes, or congestion delays, rerouting of traffic, things like that. But that number has gone up. In a one-year period, it went up about 30%, which is a bit of a challenge. So all of that leads us to this big list of unfunded needs that we have, and those include maintenance projects, road expansion projects, pathways that can relieve a little bit of road traffic, expanded transit, and then that high-capacity transit as well. Those lists then translate, basically we're trying to take the plans and translate those into projects and outcomes. And so one of the ways that we do that is we work with all the local governments, all of our member agencies around the region to go through and develop what we call a resource development program, which is actually a pretty cool thing. I've worked at a number of other places and we didn't do something like this, but this is a really good step because it helps us identify from small projects to big projects kind of what we need for the future. And so, if a local government, and we meet regularly, I'll talk about that too, but we meet regularly with staff, and that allows us to kind of know what's going on, what your teams are identifying for needs in the future, and we tie these to available funding. So, obviously, we go through every year and we track what has been spent and what's left and what is expected to come in for that future year that's about 6 years out. We program, programming, it's just like your capital improvement program. Same kind of thing. We program out about 5 years, and then we roll through every year and we add new projects. So we use this process to identify what those new projects are going to be. We also fund smaller local projects with a separate pot of money as well. And so we're able to identify projects that can receive immediate funding that are much smaller. And those tend to be studies that will line up the ability for us to compete for bigger federal grants or state grants, or start the process of identifying a project that can then move through and be selected for funding by our board at some point in the future. So those numbers are pretty stark. We've got a total of $16.5 billion of needs. With the available, that roughly $11 billion of what we think will be available, that still leaves a shortfall of about $5.5 billion. And when you annualize that out, it's just under $200 million a year. Having looked at this plan and also coming in from other places like Las Vegas and Houston and central North Carolina, I've seen a lot of growth and I've seen these kind of numbers before, and I suspect that these are actually a little bit low. I suspect that our number as a region is probably higher than that in order to just maintain the levels of travel activity and sort of travel speeds and mobility that we have right now. So as a result of that, our board, we've started with a fairly active legislative strategy for this current session. Our board adopted last fall a series of priorities, and then we have a lobbyist and myself who are meeting regularly with the legislature to try to advance these. But those priorities that our board adopted, there's a lot more detail than the bullet points show, but generally revolve around trying to find ways to increase revenue for transportation, addressing the impacts of growth on the transportation system and allowing sort of a growth pays for growth type mindset, and then trying to link housing to underutilized transportation infrastructure. So if there's trying to find ways to encourage housing to go near places where there's the capacity of the transportation system to already be able to handle that, so that we then don't have to also, in addition to providing all the other pieces of infrastructure, we don't have to also then expand transportation when we don't necessarily need to right out of the gate. This year, given the cycle and given the fact that I'm still new and learning my way around this legislature, we're focusing on incremental type changes. And then another thing that our board does that they brought me on for is I have a fair amount of experience on federal transportation policy. I used to work on the Hill on transportation issues, the Hill in DC, sorry, on transportation issues. And so we're engaging a fair amount on federal transportation policy. And this is an important year for that because the 5-year bill that Congress passed back in 2021 expires at the end of September, and everyone is working really hard to try to get the next version of that in place. It's not there yet. It's actually never been replaced on time, but everyone is still optimistic about that right now. Another thing to note about Compass is we're kind of a catalyst for transportation projects around the region. So our plan and the smaller, the big long-range plan, as well as the smaller regional or sub-regional plans, area plans that we fund and support and undertake on behalf of our member agencies, identifies needs for transportation system. Then we work with all the different funding agencies as well as the dollars that come that are channeled through Compass to try to identify funding sources for those projects. After that, we don't build the project. That's the member agencies, that's the ITD and local governments and the highway districts. But then as a result of all of that, the project gets built and then the region and the residents hopefully benefit. Still need more benefits, as I showed from those earlier charts, that earlier map. There's still a big gap, I think. But we do play this role of sort of the catalyst, making things happen around the region. Some of the examples of these, I'll just go through a couple. So these range from large projects to small projects. So the one that we'll note is sort of a large project is I-84, the Centennial Way to Franklin Road, with all those different improvements in there. Note, that went into the long-range plan back in 2006. So basically, the bigger a project is, the longer it takes to find the dollars to pay for it, to go through the engineering and the design. There's, bigger projects tend to have environmental review needs that they need to meet, and so that process takes a while. So you can see there's a big gap here. We put it into the plan in 2006. It never left the plan. We worked with, like I said, we worked with the state to come up with funding mechanisms for that. They came up with a bonding program that works. And so in 2022, we were able to get it listed as funded in our transportation improvement program to start with the first phases of that, the design, the right-of-way pieces of that. And then construction started in 2023 and should be done, fingers crossed, right, but should be done in 2027. But that's a 20-year timeline to get big projects like that done. Smaller projects as well. So the pedestrian improvements, the sidewalk from, I can't remember the name of the middle school, but the sidewalk along Montana Avenue. That one's one that can move quite a bit more quickly. So we got it funded in the TIP in 2022, shortly after that need was identified. It didn't sit for 15 years waiting to identify a funding source. We were able to move it much more quickly. And it then is expected to go under construction next year. It's about $1 million project or so, but should greatly improve safety and mobility for the kids around that middle school. As I noted, we meet pretty regularly with staff. One thing that we do every fall, we pull together our partners as well as each of the local government. We come to each of the local governments, and so we get ITD and LTAC, the Highway Technical Assistance Group, and VRT, the transit agency, if it's a jurisdiction where they operate as well. And we come to each one of the agencies, so we came to Caldwell back on Halloween. So this may be a little bit stale, there may be some new needs that are identified. One of the things that I'm doing as the new director is trying to increase the tempo of this. So instead of coming in and doing this once a year, we're going to try to do it twice a year. So we'll probably be reaching out soon to set up another one of these meetings with your team. But we identified a set of transportation challenges that you need help with, that you're looking for help with. These were fairly common on the funding for road maintenance and new projects. We know that's an issue a lot of the local governments are dealing with right now. That's part of why that became a priority for our board and through our legislative engagement activities as well. But we can help in a number of ways. You know, we can search for dollars for the projects that are your highest priority needs. We have this smaller grant program, sort of an internal to Compass grant program. These Community in Motion grants, they're usually up to about $50,000, but it's enough to do a small project or to do a study, and we can get a few of those out the door every year. We provide a lot of assistance with federal grant applications. There's a big federal grant that just closed a couple weeks ago, and our region, I think, put together 8 in total applications for these grants. If I had to add up the dollars associated with them, I'd say we probably applied for about $120 million total of project funds, including, I think, 2 that would impact Caldwell. We facilitate that interagency coordination. So, you know, we bring in, like I said, we bring in all the stakeholders that take the lead role in getting these projects done and getting them out the door. And then all that data and technical support that we can provide you and your teams to be able to move forward with your own individual studies and planning efforts that you're undertaking too. So just in summary, you know, Compass is here to help. As you know, as the region's metropolitan planning organization, we're working with all of you to plan for our future transportation system. We have a big focus on safety, and so we have that regional safety action plan. We have educational materials that we freely provide. I don't think we're operating one out here, but there are a couple movie theaters, and I think in Meridian and Boise right now, where if you go to the movie, you're going to see a preview. That preview is going to have a little safety message from Compass that we're promoting. We facilitate regional discussions. We do that project funding. We pay a lot of attention to your local planning activities so that then we can turn around and make sure that our regional plan reflects what the local governments are looking for. And frankly, I mean, if there were something that were like horribly, out of alignment with what the region has, a path that the region's been on for a long time, we're going to come back probably and try to work through that. We also do an annual recognition of achievements. It's a great way for agencies and members who have been really successful with something related to transportation in the past year. So individuals and projects, and we do a banquet dinner every December for that as well. And then we do a whole bunch of work around data. We have, I would say, some of the best data around transportation and growth in the region. And so we make that freely available. We can also do all kinds of analysis and support work for that for you. So, I think the takeaways, our motto sort of has been for a number of years now that, we're serving as your forum for regional collaboration, but we're also kind of the steward of the region's transportation system, as well as a catalyst, tracking projects and trying to make them happen, trying to keep things moving and accelerate project delivery whenever we can support the actual builders of those projects. So with that, that wraps up the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. When I first started doing these, I had support people that came with me because I didn't know anything yet about the region. So this is your chance to try to stump me because I didn't bring anyone with me today, but I do appreciate your time. And like I said, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your presentation, Craig. Any question from council? Councilor Stoddard.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mr. Rayborn, I'm on the 5C committee, Canyon County Concerned Citizens. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. Okay. Anyway, we, back in 2018, we heard about the mass transit program that Mayor McLean wanted in this whole Treasure Valley area, mainly rail. So we did study in 3 different cities, Portland, Oregon, Salt Lake City, and Denver. And in Portland, Oregon, the initial cost for mass transit was $2 billion. And when you subtract all the investments, federal, state, private grants, and everything else, it still costs the taxpayers annually $279.2 million. And that's, that's got to come from someplace like the taxpayers. That was Portland. Salt Lake City, we did a study down there. The original cost was $1.2 billion, 2018 dollars. And after they did all the grants, maintenance costs, vehicle, the whole thing, it cost taxpayers $353 million over and above of what the grants were. So, and then the last city we did was Denver. That was $7.8 billion. And after all the grants were put in and the cost and everything, it still cost the taxpayers $400 million a year. So do you folks take those things in consideration relative to what it's going to cost these communities?
So, if I could, Mayor, yes, we do. So, just to be clear, the study that we just completed is more of a what's the best option if the region were to decide to proceed with some form of a high-capacity transit system. Mm-hmm. So it's not, there's no funding attached to any kind of project yet. But one of the trends that's been happening, really going back about 30 years or so, so it didn't really catch the Portland system development, but it did get, Salt Lake City and Denver both got kind of caught up in this, is that it used to be that the federal contribution was quite a bit more. That has been changing over time. So the federal contribution, it becomes less and less. So what it means is in order for something like this to be successful, local areas have to come up with their own funding mechanism. And the bigger push has been, recently at least, has been for public-private partnerships. So when we were looking at it was a much smaller system than the distance that we're talking about here. But in Las Vegas, we were looking at a similar concept, at least, to do a rail system. And the only way that was going to be able to pencil was if we did public-private partnerships and did some higher density development along that corridor. And so that the actual local burden, our revenue source didn't allow us to spend any money on transit operations, and so it had to be able to pay for all of itself that way. And so in order for that to be able to advance, those public-private partnerships with private development community were really necessary to make it feasible.
Well, I would hope that maybe the participation in those investments would be a lot more than it was in 2018, but you can about imagine what kind of pressure that puts on the taxpayers to have something like that operate. And the other thing is, I think, didn't Napa give up its spur for its depot?
Sorry, say again, please?
Did Napa give up its spur for the depot? I mean, Caldwell still has a train depot, but I'm not sure about Napa.
The consultant identified possible locations for the stops, but the plan is not even at that. That's a good sense of like the stage that we're at. Is it didn't even get to the point of saying, okay, here's the actual plan where the piece of, this is where the station serving Nampa would be. They just identified, there would have to be one somewhere in this area, and try to put that in the places where, where the demographics and the road network make the most sense.
So who would be responsible for the study relative to what it would cost the taxpayers over and above of what the government gives in grants and everything? Would that be your department, or is that somebody else?
And if it were to advance, we would probably be, if not the lead agency, we'd be certainly playing a big role in providing a lot of the data and analytics for it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Stoddard. Councilor Allgood.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to clarify something that was a bit shocking. You said Idaho or Canyon County is going to grow by 500,000 in the next 25 years?
It was Canyon and Ada County combined.
Canyon and Ada County, that's 20,000 a year, right here, roughly.
Approximately, yeah.
So-
Yeah, our actual numbers, I haven't, but our actual numbers for Caldwell are, you know, you're right now, let me find that real quickly, but, yeah, your population in Caldwell will probably grow by about 60 to 65% over those 25 years. And your jobs are almost going to double.
So with that in mind, I noticed you did a birth rate here. We're pretty average on birth rates. So is that people moving here?
It's a lot of people moving here. Yeah, it's
The
economic
birth
growth.
rates is not a big part of it. It's going to be more people moving here is kind of what I'm asking.
To be honest, I'm not sure exactly what the birth rate differential, you know, how that would play out. They're what they call population pyramids that we can look at for that. I don't have that. I can, there's no way that a region of this population, you know, with 850,000 can add 500,000 without most of that coming from outside.
That's 500,000 people coming here, mostly 500,000.
Mostly 500,000, yeah.
From, that's a huge number.
It is. If you think about that in numbers, and I'll just, you know, try to translate that directly just to Caldwell. So if, like, on average, people drive about 20 miles a day. So with your population right now, on average, Caldwell drivers are you know, going about 1.5, 1.7 million miles a day. With your new population that will probably come here, you're going to basically add about 1 million to that.
And one of the other things you said was you're within 1% either way on your estimates.
It's been pretty close. So I'd say 1 to 2%, but yeah, it's been pretty
That's
close.
still very close.
Yeah. And we base those projections, if I could, we base those projections on approved development permits and the, you know, the entitlements that are already in place. And then we do a little bit of sort of demand modeling for land use based on transportation, infrastructure and so on. But yeah, those numbers, at the regional level, they've been very accurate. There might be greater variation when we go to the sort of the individual jurisdictions, but they tend to be pretty close.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much.
Sure.
All right, any other questions from council? Seeing none, thank you, Craig. We do appreciate the excellent work that Compass does for the communities across the valley, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, next up, we're going to hear an update from Deborah Kraft, President of the Canyon County Anti-Trafficking Task Force. Welcome, Deborah, and we appreciate your report.
Thank you. I will say our presentation is approximately 18 minutes. Should I start? Okay. Thank you to you, Mayor Phillips, and to the City Council. We appreciate this opportunity to share our work, what we do, and a little bit about how we operate. Our task force is a nonprofit. We've been in existence for about 5.5 years, and our sole purpose is to bring educational programs to the communities that will both educate and train citizens on how to keep their loved ones, if they are minors, and themselves, if they are minors, from the victimization by sexual predators. So with that, I'm going to just start this the first part of this is a rolling presentation. It gives you an idea of the work that we did last year. So it's about a not quite a 2-minute portion. These are some of the different organizations we gave presentations to last year, are not our children presentations. We had 4 booth displays last year. We hope to have these this year too. A couple of pictures of those events. In the background of our tent, you'll see that there are images of the Department of Homeland Security Know to Protect campaign. And then we work to bring professional speakers to different events, starting in January of last year. It was very well received by the youth, that presentation. This was a real eye-opener, this one from the ICAC, Idaho Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. And then last October, we worked with the State Department of Education and brought in a special agent who presented the Know to Protect campaign to about 350 educators up in Sun Valley. Another MIAC event. Kids just love this. A couple of other ways we've reached out to communities. And then finally, we are now co-branded with the Department of Homeland Security Know to Protect campaign. We have fully embraced this campaign. We feel it is really probably the Cadillac of educational programs offered around the nation. There are a lot of other very good educational programs from private organizations, but Department of Homeland Security partners with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, collectively also with the Internet Crimes Against Children task forces around the nation. There are 61. We have one here in Idaho operating out of Boise. It includes approximately 100 law enforcement, and so with that large network and all that insight from the investigative work they do online, we feel this is really a stellar program. So we have fully embraced it. And so I want to just now spend a little time focusing on the crimes that occur on the internet with our youth. We use this image, we've used it a number of times because we feel it's very powerful in sending the message and highlighting both the reality and the challenge we face trying to keep our youth safe on the internet. The reality is that when a youth steps through that portal and goes onto the World Wide Web, they are straddling two different worlds, two different dimensions, if you will. One leg, one foot on the ground in the physical world and the other one in the virtual world. And the challenge we have in educating our youth and to keep them safe is to get them to understand that the decisions they make and the actions they take in that virtual world have a very real and physical effect on them in their physical world. So now I want to show you a couple of different ways, actually 3 different ways that our youth can be victimized on the internet. The first is through we break this down into 3 different phases on the internet with these predators. This would be the first phase. It's called the initial contact, and this is when the predator reaches out to that youth. By the time they've made that first exchange of hellos, that child, teenager, feels they have just made a friend, and they are very vulnerable because they are craving these relationships. But what the predator is doing is extracting enough personal information from that youth to build a persona, a profile, if you will, that will match that youth and give that predator the greatest chance of befriending that youth. This is the second phase. This is called the grooming phase. This is where the predator now begins to focus on the vulnerabilities of the youth's relationship with the parents, trusted adults, tries to drive a wedge between them so that that youth will go to the predator before or even instead of the parent to confide in. And so that foundation of trust is being built up in this phase. And the final phase is sextortion. This is where that predator lures that youth over that threshold to produce that first nude image. And literally in an instant, that predator will turn on that youth and hammer them. The law enforcement uses the term rapid fire demands, brutal demands. And when the youth cannot meet those demands, that youth ultimately sometimes the results can be very tragic with suicide. So this is another way that youth are victimized by these sexual predators on the internet. This is generative AI, and what this technology can now do in this first example is copy the face of a youth when they post what seems to be a very innocent image and transfer it onto the image of a sexually explicit activity. on another body, a nude body. The second way is that when a youth posts an image online, or unfortunately parents too, adults, a predator can pull that off and then use AI, generative AI, to undress that youth and then throw that at the youth for sextortion. And either one of these ways is just as effective as if it was really a true nude, because these youth, even if they know it's not true, they realize that others are not going to know that. So when that nude gets distributed, it has just as frightening an effect on the youth. Finally, this is something that we confirmed with ICAC in February when we presented at the state capitol along with ICAC, that the latest trend they're seeing is youth producing self-generated nudes and either sharing them with romantic partners or using them as currency in exchange for other items such as food, clothing, tickets. And so this is growing now. What's happening with our youth is that they're being so inundated with sexually explicit images and pornography that they're becoming desensitized to it. And they are actually, it's changing their brain development, and it's building an addiction to sexual satisfaction. And so what's happening is we're seeing younger and younger individuals targeting youth. One of the highest growing, fastest growing categories right now is young males around the age of 25 or younger victimizing youth. But also we're seeing these youth now victimizing each other. So that led us to ask, what other dangers are so severe that are presented to our youth that warrant them being educated on how to keep themselves safe through safety programs in the schools? And we naturally turn to drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. The numbers in black are from a survey done by the National Institute of Health, and this shows that approximately 25% of the youth surveyed were indulging in various types of substance abuse. But when we turn to the Pew Research Center, who also did a 2025 study, and these are teenagers, so ages 13 through 17, the survey was for 272 schools, I believe, covering about 24,000 students. 92% were on the internet. So the threat of them being exposed to dangers that are just as damaging and deadly are almost 4 times as great with the internet. So the need to educate our youth is so critical to start to turn the numbers around. And so I want to show you some of these numbers right now, because this slide is from the Idaho Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, ICAC, Idaho ICAC. Last year, the number of cyber tips they received from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, those are tips on suspected child sexual abuse activity happening on the internet, reached a little over 6,100. This year, from January 1st through March 10th, there have been 1,187, with an daily average of approximately 17 cyber tips per day. Now, to be fair, ICAC says that approximately half of those cases are closed before they're ever investigated because they do not fit within the parameters. For instance, if they are looking at an image and they can't put an age on it, tell whether it's 16 or 18, they have to close the case because they don't do any investigations at the adult age. But even then, if you cut this to half, we have 8 cyber tips per day coming into Idaho. That includes either children being suspected being victimized, predators located in Idaho, or the technology used for a particular crime has some type of nexus in Idaho. Absolutely frightening numbers. This is a very brief message from the Know to Protect campaign that really drives home the need for law enforcement to have communities step up to the plate and start educating. Is this going to show? It's a 1-minute video. No? Okay. Well, basically what they say, they talk about the critical need for parents to start having conversations with their children, and those conversations can take place by trusted adults also. And they drive home the need for, they say they cannot arrest their way out of this crime. They need the communities to step up to the plate and help get the youth educated. So this is a screenshot of the Know to Protect website homepage. This is one of about 5 scrolling messages on that homepage. But I want to draw your attention, if you can read this, just below the logo, it talks about, it gives all the different services they offer. So one, it tells a little bit about them, but the other one is take action. So if you want to get involved, that's how you can take those steps to work with them. Cyber tip reports, if you suspect something, you can contact them directly. No questions asked, they will start to look into it. They have Know to Protect for kids and teens. That's all the educational material, including what they work with from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And then they have a category for teens. Wonderful material. Parents can use it with their kids. Schools can use it to educate in their safety classes. And adults, kids can use it on their own too. There's a lot of fun stuff going on there. Survivor support, if anybody suspects or knows if a youth has already been victimized, these are ways that they can be helped. The training such as that, when we brought Special Agent Mitch Byerly up to Sun Valley for that conference, that was considered a training session for those educators. And then finally, campaign resources, wonderful creative campaign resources. So I want to show you one more here, because this one now is the digital billboard. We worked with Yes Go Advertising. This is up now on their digital billboards throughout the state. So between Caldwell and Nampa, and all the way up to Rexburg, and all the way up to Moscow, these will be rotating. This is one of 2 different images with messages that will be rotating throughout the day. And we're working with another advertising company now. We hope to get those messages up on the boards this month. And then finally, what we can do to work with the City of Caldwell to explore ways we can get that educational material out to the citizens, not just in the schools, but in general, out in the public. And I will end with the recognition that we do have a meeting set up with Caldwell Community Outreach Specialist Gino Allen to explore ways where we can use those types of services to incorporate these educational messages and opportunities into the City of Caldwell. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Deborah, for that presentation. Council, any questions? Going once, going twice. Thank you. We appreciate what your organization does for Canyon County, and thank you for your presentation tonight.
Thank you, and I just want to add, you should all have a handout here. This is just an example of some of the material. So this, on one side, it's top 10 tips to protect for teens, and on the other side for parents and trusted adults. So feel free to hand that out to anybody and everybody who might benefit.
All right, thank you. With that, we will conclude tonight's workshop. Let's take a quick 5-minute break for whatever you need to take care of, and we'll be back at 6:05. Is that okay?